I don't know much what to think about this story here, but a story from the New York Post reports how a woman that says she stopped taking the birth control pill, stopped taking the pill, and within a month I was bisexual and dating women. So we take this story here. Australian woman says she found herself feeling frisky for the fairest sex when she got off of contraceptives. Tessa Bona, age 30, she was first prescribed at 15 years old. And she spent almost a decade and a half taking the pill each day, identified as heterosexual, only dating men. Then she broke up with her long-term boyfriend last year. Then she decided to quit birth control. And then she says she's now drawn to women. And before she said, I had never given women a go romantically. I never really thought that was for me. Now, by the way, her and the girlfriend are gorgeous. Just going to give you that heads up. She says, once I got off the pill, everything changed. All of a sudden, men were just not attractive to me. And so she's now with her girlfriend, Phoebe Chakar, and they've been dating for 6 months. Like, they're both knockouts, by the way. Let me just make that point across. She says that it was love at first sight. Phoebe's the absolute love of my life. I couldn't be happier. It's a totally different dynamic to being with a man. Now, do we want to say that this is actually contributed because of the fact of maybe, do we want to feel like they're saying this because of the fact that it was because of the birth control that stopped it? There's been other stories they said that, someone would feel that way after removing birth control. I don't know if that's true or not, but there's a point where they're trying to make that point here. And she said that it breaks my heart to think this might have ever happened if I was still on the pill. Now, she's encouraging other women to take a break from contraceptives, and not just because it reportedly tweaked their sexuality. She says that when I was on the pill and in relationships with men, I thought I wanted to settle down, have kids, get married. But since getting off the pill, it's like my brain is so much clearer. That's not what I wanted at all. She says, I feel like the pill can turn you into a dull person if you've been on it too long. I think every woman should take a break from it if they want to and see how they feel. Now, she still considers herself a little bit bisexual. She says he's much more attracted to women. And she says, I hardly look at men anymore. It's actually hilarious. The sexual attraction to guys is pretty much all gone. Okay. But the thing is that I don't want to just assume that that was the reason why all that happened, because of the fact that it wasn't as if listen, there's a thing to be said about if a woman decides to go from straight to lesbian. We know that obviously there's always reasons that can happen. I'm not going to try to get into the whole diatribe as to why. But we know that enough women will do that because of being in abusive relationships and feeling that they can get much more of a emotional attachment to a woman, obviously. And there have been women that are friends with other women that might feel like, oh, well, maybe there's something to where they might feel, there might be actual feelings behind it, and then they might be romantic, and they might be pursued. Because I honestly think it's much more common if women did feel bisexual. I think that's actually, it's like some kind of like fantasy comes like something like that. I just really feel like someone probably feel that they can be more likely more likely bisexual than others. I really do think that. I mean, but it also depends on her sexuality. Like, first of all, I mean, she's a very sexual woman. We don't know what her backstory was, and the fact she was taking birth control. We don't even know what doctors were prescribing her. There's plenty of birth control pills out there. And the thing is that when women are taking the birth control, I mean, it's more of a thing like if they are having sex outside of marriage, which many are, plus if there's a promiscuity kind of feel, or the chance of promiscuity, and to protect themselves from not having any children with somebody they don't want to be with. But here's the thing too, and Tessa doesn't say this here. She can't get pregnant with another woman. And the fact that she's off contraception, then she knows that protection of being pregnant is now gone. So what it really is that a woman is getting the chance to not put herself at risk. She's now trying to just basically say, well, I'm not going to deal with a man because I'm not using protection. And even if the guy is using protection. And so what happens is, we know that birth control is not perfect. We know that there are side effects for birth control to many women. And that's understood. I don't know. I almost feel like I kind of agree with her here. If women want to just get themselves off the pill, they should. But the thing is just that for any man or woman, I mean, you're going to do what you're going to do sexually, but it's also a responsibility and accountability of what you do. Because most importantly, we want responsible sex partners. We don't want sex partners who are just going to go out there and just fool around and not consider the fact that, hey, let's hump, let's have sex, right? But I don't want to have kids, and I don't think you want to be pregnant. Wrap it up. I mean, there's something to be said about making sure that both people realize the responsibility and accountability. Obviously, for the guy, same thing goes. And the thing, too, is that, as far as I know, I mean, birth control is much more effective than it is. But that's also because what needs to happen, too, is we need more birth control that's going to be much more... We need contraceptives that do not need to be a birth control pill that's used every day. I think that's the other thing we got to worry about, too. Because I'll tell you, one of the stories I remember going back to that I remember got a whole lot of talk through all the stories I've put out there. And I'm trying to think about which ones it was that really got like the attention of people and said, man, you know, people were really curious as to what was going on. That was the one. There was a story I brought up back in March of last year about a new posterior prophylactic being approved. Remember we talked about that? And I thought maybe there's a chance something will happen from it. And we went through the story. The first FDA-approved anal sex condom. There's obviously some other options that are going on. Like we have things that are going on where there are new and probably FDA-approved situations, other treatments that can be done that do not have to be, like I think women, if they had the chance to say, okay, if we just have contraceptives, that's just an oral, or it's something that's just a topical, something that we can have before we go in, that will be really great. But we're not. And that's part of the thing we need to figure out. And I think people do need to really realize we can get to that point. But they're not yet. What can I say? Now, into the story one more time. Like I said, and you look at the women, they're beautiful. You look at the link, you can see for yourself. And so there is a lady that talks on here explaining what what the whole thought process is when she decided to go ahead and pursue. Now, there's a lady they talked to here in this story, and I don't think they gave properly where she's from. But there's a name. The lady's name is Catherine Maslin. She's a women's health specialist. Thank you. She talked to news.com.au that it is interesting that Bonna's sexual preferences apparently change. Quote, there is research that suggests that the pill can change your choice as a partner, but it's really interesting to change sex preferences. And she noticed that massive personality changes among patients who've gone off birth control medication. She says, quote, this isn't really surprising since there are millions of estrogen and progesterone receptors in the brain. So all of that, I think there's something to be said that maybe there should be a conversation about contraception, about what women have to go and be subjected to on a regular basis. But it's also a matter where we need to change altogether of saying, okay, we need changes so that there are men and women are much more responsible. Because to have all these pregnancies that happen on a regular basis that are unplanned, unwarranted, and neither the mother or father of that child is going to be there for them and together to be there for that child, we need to be better considerate of that. We do not need to be having so many any kids being raised by single parents. Not anymore. We need to change that some way, somehow. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there, and I'll just say this, because maybe things will get a little bit better if the pill gives people a little more. If you can get off the pill and there's a little more freedom and more levity, then let's just be responsible while we continue to be depraved and debaucherous.